This is OwlUp, where learning happens in minutes, not hours. For a deeper journey, explore all our courses at owlup.co. Now, let's dive in. Welcome to Chapter 1 of How Empires Actually Collapse, where we're diving into the big question: what actually brings down these massive civilizations that seem so invincible? Today we're exploring the usual suspects behind imperial downfall, from economic meltdowns to military overstretch to good old-fashioned corruption. Let's get into it. An empire can feel immortal on Monday and start dying by Friday, without anyone noticing. A general loses a province, a harvest fails, a border tribe stops being afraid. Each event seems small. Here's the puzzle. When do ordinary setbacks quietly tip into true collapse? By the time people start saying everything is falling apart, the critical damage usually happened years earlier, deep in the wiring of the system. Power stops flowing cleanly from center to frontier. Orders still go out, but governors stall, generals ignore, tax collectors skim. The chart of authority looks the same on parchment, yet in practice it's full of dead circuits. Three big stress lines tend to spread through a system: politics, money, and the material world. Factions at the top multiply and harden, turning every decision into trench warfare. Budgets bloat while real income quietly erodes, like a company that grows revenues but loses profit on every sale. Then, climate, disease, or resource shifts hit, and suddenly yesterday's tolerable compromises become lethal weaknesses. In this episode, we'll track how those stress lines interact, and why timing matters more than any single blow. Think less about a single breaking point and more about a schedule that keeps slipping. A delayed reform here, a postponed tax change there, a peace treaty that buys time but at a higher interest rate in blood and gold. The state isn't just stressed, it's slowly losing its capacity to respond at the speed of events. That gap between how fast problems evolve and how slowly institutions adjust is where the real danger hides. Once that delay becomes routine, shocks don't just hurt, they stack, overlap, and start to lock in permanent losses of capacity. Start with the basic pattern historians keep finding. Big systems don't usually fall because they run out of resources. They fall because they run out of room to maneuver. One way to see this is through what researchers call declining marginal returns to complexity. Early on, adding more layers, new offices, laws, fortresses, roads, pays off. Each extra unit of effort brings a big jump in security or revenue. But over time, every fix needs another committee, every fortress needs its own supply chain, every new elite group demands exemptions and rewards. The overhead rises faster than the benefits. That's how you get numbers like the Western Roman state losing a huge share of its tax base while still trying to fund roughly the same military footprint. The map says, we still own this, but the balance sheet quietly says, we can't actually afford to own this at the previous level of control. The usual response is to squeeze what's left. Higher taxes on those who can't evade, more requisitions in kind, debasement of currency, forced labor obligations. Short term, it works. Long term, it burns through trust. Trust, here, isn't sentimental, it's a hard asset. People ship grain, pay levies, and show up to fight because they expect some mix of protection, justice, and predictable rules. As the center leans harder on shrinking resources, it also tends to pick winners. Certain regions or groups are shielded, others are strip-mined. That not only redistributes pain, it changes who sees the system as worth saving. This is where external pressure becomes catalytic rather than causal. Barbarians, rival powers, or breakaway regions don't have to be especially strong. They just have to be strong enough that groups inside the system start asking, why should I keep paying into something that no longer pays me back? At that point, refusal spreads faster than punishment. Think of this like a medical case where multiple mild conditions, high blood pressure, chronic stress, bad sleep, interact until a small infection suddenly becomes life-threatening. None of the underlying issues looked catastrophic alone, but together they narrow the margin for error until a routine shock can't be contained. Over decades, the visible signs are familiar. Garrisons go unpaid, borders become zones of negotiation instead of enforcement, office holders treat posts as private assets, and the stories the system tells about itself stop matching what people see. The structure still stands, but more and more of it is hollow, and everyone quietly adjusts to doing less with less. Think about the late Western Roman officials trying to keep the show running. They start cutting corners the way a tech startup patches legacy code. A quick fix here, a workaround there, until the system is a tangle of scripts nobody fully understands. A governor grants one city tax exemptions to calm unrest. A general promises land to troops he can't quite pay. A courtier sells access to speed up decisions that used to be routine. Each action feels rational in the moment, but together they hardwire inequality and delay into the system. Look at the Maya lowlands. As rainfall patterns shifted, elites doubled down on monument building and ritual rather than rethinking water management or urban layout. The Soviet Union, staring at flatlining growth, maintained near-wartime military allocations instead of shedding commitments or decentralizing. In both cases, leaders treated warning signs as noise to be managed, not signals that the basic operating model needed to change. The bill came due later, with interest. Resilience today is less about avoiding shock and more about rehearsing failure in advance. Cities that run blackout drills or simulate major hacks build muscle memory the way pilots use flight simulators. The goal isn't perfection, it's shortening recovery time. Nations that share key infrastructure with neighbors, publish ugly data instead of hiding it, and let local regions experiment with fixes are quietly adding exits to the maze, so no single hit decides the whole story. History suggests the real leverage point is earlier, moments when people can still renegotiate roles, shrink ambitions, and redesign rules before strain hardens. Like a band rearranging a song mid-tour, systems can drop notes, change tempo, or swap instruments. In later episodes, we'll look at who actually does this and what it costs them. Before next week, ask yourself, 1. Where in my life am I relying on a single point of failure, like one income stream, one key person, or one fragile habit, to hold everything together, and what's one realistic way I could start adding redundancy there today? 2. Looking at the systems I'm part of, my team at work, my household routines, my finances, which one feels most brittle, where a small shock could cause a big collapse? And what early warning signals could I watch for before things break? 3. If I assume that slow erosion is more dangerous than sudden catastrophe, what ongoing stressors, like chronic overwork, ignored conflict, or constant distractions, am I currently normalizing, and which one am I finally willing to stop tolerating this week? This was OwlUp, your daily step forward. To keep learning with structured courses and more insights, go to owlup.co. Until tomorrow!